see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.
So let me just introduce, I'm Edwin Rutsch from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I'm here today with Eva Vigran. Thanks, Eva, for joining me. Yeah, and we're good friends from, we've known each other for quite a few years, and I've been taking part in your dance, weekly dance.
That's right.
Which has been very meaningful to me, and kind of where I really relax a lot and kind of let go. And so thanks for joining me here to talk about how we can go about building a culture of empathy in dance.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about empathy before. So you know what I found is, well, actually, let me show your website. You have a website. I can show that on the screen here. It's.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about it? Cork Connection and.
Oh, about my website?
Yeah, and what
Sure.
you're doing. Yeah, go ahead. I'm showing it on the screen. I'm showing you the corkconnection.net website,
okay.
and
Okay,
I see
cool.
you with the drum and with the
Okay.
plants all over, and you jumping in the air.
Oh, cool. Excellent. Well, I mean, our work is all about being authentic, being empathic with yourself, basically. So getting in touch with yourself and bringing that into expression. So getting in touch with your inner nature, I call it, our inner core, that, you know, doing our upbringing and, you know, being in general society, you know, often that part is a little bit suppressed, and sometimes it's not so welcome either, or we just forgot about it just because we're doing other things. And in the dance and in the work with nature and moving with others and to being in that process with others, we're kind of digging out this core place, this natural place that is beyond words, basically, that is kind of beyond our conscious everyday thinking. It's a deeper place.
So the dance for you is a way of kind of self-connection, getting kind of beyond the vocabulary, beyond the words, down to kind of deeper feelings and essences. Yeah.
Exactly. There's just a kind of a much deeper connection, more our feeling self, our sensing self, and also that part of ourselves that kind of perceives just bigger than just our conscious thinking, which is always some kind of defended conscious thinking, right?
So that's kind of like the what you're feeling that your work is around is kind of that self-connection to a deeper sense. Then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, that really ties in with empathy, because I see empathy as kind of starting with self-empathy. You know, how do we connect to ourselves and to those deeper feelings and values and sensations within ourselves. So
Exactly. I think that is really a great point. That the first step in our work, and that's kind of the most important one for me too, is the self-empathy. And often we just think about ourselves, right? And I mean, so often, I mean, what are the things that you think about yourself? You're either beating yourself up what you did wrong again, or you tell yourself how great you are, right? Or you're starting to plan what you're going to do next, or in a year, or in 5 years, or in 5 minutes, or you're thinking about what you did before, right? But these are the things that we usually think about. But what is actually going on right now, there we really have to go beyond that thinking, right? We can see what's going on emotionally, you know, what kind of feeling might be present, what's going on in my body, what kind of sensations are going on. And that kind of gives me a much better feeling and sense of who I am at the moment.
Yeah, so dance is a good way to do that, because it gets beyond the verbal and gets to kind of a more felt, you know, because you're out there moving, and it's a freestyle dance, so you can kind of move any way and as freely as you want, generally.
And you experience yourself in movement. You're experiencing yourself while you're moving, while you're breathing. You might move more than usually, and you have to pay attention where you're stepping. You have to pay attention that you don't hit somebody else. So you really have to kind of be present with yourself and be present with your body in movement, in space, and also how you catch yourself, that you don't fall over, that you stay in balance, all these kind of things. So you have to kind of be present with yourself. So you can't really be thinking about anything because you kind of have to be present. And in this time of being present, in this time of being in the moment, that really short time, that's also the time where I think the self-empathy can happen, because it happens in real time.
Yeah, you're really connecting to it at that in those moments of the dance, and gives you a kind of a space and time to kind of do that and get away from the planning. I mean, that's for me what it's like, right? All day long I'm thinking, I'm planning, I've got this and that. So let's set some time aside to really go deeply into kind of connecting for myself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you know what you're doing is it is the arts, and the arts are really good at connecting us to deeper parts of ourselves, and I find that metaphor helps to do that too. And so I was wondering, do you have like a metaphor for empathy? Like what, usually empathy is seen as standing in someone else's shoes, looking through someone else's eyes, and that's like a metaphor. You're kind of pictorially imagining what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes. So do you have a metaphor what empathy is like for you?
Well, I kind of found two things, actually. For me, empathy and compassion, you also kind of call it compassion sometimes, I saw, is kind of like water, because it can become like anything else. Water can take on any shape, right, that it wants to, that it can. It just flows into anything. So empathy and compassion is kind of like that. For me, it's kind of the openness to kind of put myself in your shoes, the openness of feeling what you might feel, right, of understanding where you might be coming from, to kind of shape my emotional body like your emotional body. The same thing like my physical body, right? So I might, which they're all together, like the emotional body, the physical body, and also what I think about. They're all together, but it's kind of in compassion and empathy, I'm open to kind of take on your how should I say, your texture, the waves of your emotional life, so that I can experience this in me, and have more of an insight about it, and also have compassion for you, and also for life itself, because there might be a lot of people going through this.
Well, my metaphor for empathy, yours is like water, and it takes on all the different shapes and textures, and so for me, empathy is like a cornucopia, in the sense that when I experience all that, those emotions and feelings that are coming from you, that it's like this cornucopia, this horn of plenty of.
Yes.
So I kind of focus on the fun of it, the joy, the richness, so that kind of part of it. So for you, what is the opposite of empathy? And what would be the metaphor, or what would be the metaphor for the opposite? If empathy is like water, what's the opposite?
Well, it's more like steel, or you're unmovable. And you're not feeling anything. You're unmovable. You don't have any openness or also willingness to change anything, and it's also some kind of coldness, I think. I have one other, it might not be a metaphor, but the way, because I like the kind of the word play of compassion, because I think love is very close to compassion on one level, and love has two sides somehow. There's compassion, so my willingness of feeling what you feel and accept that, right? but there's also passion. So I like that it kind of has two sides. So that I just wanted to say that also, to bring that in. But empathy itself, I think, is just kind of the openness of being able to become anything and having fun with that, right? I mean, there are also a lot of spiritual practices that take that on. Might be yoga, in yoga you take on whatever, you go into the shape of downward dog, right? And you basically become a dog. Or in Buddhist tantric practice, you kind of take on these deities that you're working with. And in that time, you kind of try to become these deities, to take on their qualities. And so, there are a lot of practices around that. So I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the empathy kind of allows us to, it kind of enriches our life. So
yeah, absolutely.
That by empathizing with you, I'm getting to experience all the variety of feelings that you have. I'm not only just feeling my own limited feelings, but it kind of opens me to be able to share yours and kind of have the fun of that. Those extra feelings, those different textures and flavors. It's kind of like the cornucopia, right? It's like the apple, tasting the apple has the kiwi fruit, the passion fruit, it's that whole kind of sensory, kind of sensing all those different experiences and textures and just enriches our life and makes us rich. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I also think, all these experiences are universal, right? Through empathy, we might kind of get turned on to them or get opened up to them because it might never have happened to us before. And now by being empathic with somebody else, there's this whole new path being opened up for us. But I think all these experiences are universal because they're life, right?
Yeah.
They're there anyway, we just didn't know.
Oh, okay. So by empathizing with someone else, they were there to begin with, the potential for them, but then this is kind of allowing that potential to kind of come through. So
exactly.
Okay, well now we've got this metaphor. On one hand, we've got the steel, cold steel, rigid, and on the other hand, we have water flowing richness. So how do we get from this cold steel, how do we transition, to a culture of empathy? I call it a culture of empathy, which is that richness, that So what have you seen, especially in dance? Like, what is it that kind of gets us over there?
Well, what's really interesting that maybe we can go a little further. That we could say the one is the water and the other one is the ice. Right, because it's cold and it's not moving. So it's just a different kind of Aggregatzustand. How do you say it?
Yeah, different states.
A different state of the same thing, right? It's just that one is frozen and can't move, and it's it's kind of frozen in some kind of structure. But when it changes its state, then it starts to flow and can do a lot of things. And that is basically what we do in our sessions, right? At the beginning, we might be frozen in some kind of state that happened during the day, and we can't even imagine anything else. But then through kind of anchoring ourselves in the body, kind of calming down, sensing the earth, our breath, and then slowly kind of mobilizing ourselves, and the music gets a little faster, we start to get warmed up, and we start to sweat. So we're basically kind of melting these structures inside in the body that we have kind of built all day, right? And when we sit in front of the computer, if I do that the whole day, then slowly my shoulders are kind of moving up, and in the evenings my shoulders are basically here. So if I start my session like this, then after a while, through moving it, they can kind of come back to their usual place, and then the energy can kind of flow through my body again. And when it can do that, then also the emotional world can flow again, and I can also start to empathize with others. Before I was so stuck in my own bodily shape.
Yeah, so your dance workshops are kind of like ice melting processes.
Exactly. We're thawing parts of us, and not only the bodily structures that are kind of clumped together, but also the emotional places that I thought. Absolutely. Especially if you do it as a practice every week, right? You also kind of are starting to warm up with each other, right? There might be people that you don't like so much at the beginning. You don't want to dance with them or empathize at all with them. You rather stay a little cool. But because you see them every week and have little interactions with them, you're starting to warm up with them also. And then some interaction and empathic stuff happens automatically, right?
Yeah, just start melting and the water starts flowing
Mm-hmm.
on the dance floor. Yeah. So we were kind of talking about the self-empathy, and so you're saying, yeah, I guess the steps for self-empathy were what? If we kind of recap, it was
Okay.
to start melting, right? We got to kind of connect to ourselves. We get
Mhm.
on the dance floor. Um,
Well,
we
first of
get away from everything.
mhm. First of all, we kind of get away from everything, and then we start to connect with gravity, with our bodies, with our breath,
Sensation and what's say
sensation.
we're trying to find ways of sensing, getting awareness of the sensations that are in our body. What's going
Exactly.
on? Okay.
Exactly. And we start with the physical sensations because they are kind of the slowest of our sensory input. Emotions are kind of fast and watery. Thoughts are really fast. They're more like air or electricity or something like that. But bodily sensations are kind of really grounded and slow. So we'll start to kind of get in touch with those, so that we're kind of slowing down our fast thinking process, and kind of that fast, quick life that has been going on lately, right, in our Western world with all this input. So we're starting to slow things down by sensing, and we're using also things that are always there for us. For example, the ground, the earth, gravity is always there for us. That won't change, right? And as long as we live, the movement of our breath is always there for us, because there might be when we check in with our bodies, there might be parts of the body that are painful, so we might not want to sense those so much. So we rather want to start with something that is safe. So gravity is safe, that's always there. The breath is safe, that's always there. Relatively safe, right?
So
It's
what you're
always
saying, these are kind of ways that get us out of our daily routine or thought processes, is to say, okay, what does it feel like to breathe? Just kind of be aware of that, and that kind of brings us to our body.
mm-hmm,
And then you can also see, well, what's gravity? I'm like here, I'm standing here, and I
mm-hmm.
can feel. So we're trying to become aware of how gravity is pulling our body.
Exactly.
And
How gravity's pulling on my arms, how it's pulling on my jaw, right? How gravity is actually making me heavy, and I don't have to spin out into the universe and go crazy. So
okay,
we're starting to connect to things like that, that have been there all of our lives, and they always will be there, no matter what we're thinking about, or in what position we're in, or what place on the earth we are. They're always there, and they're very reliable, and that can kind of bring us down so that we can actually start to sense our bodies,
okay.
and sense ourselves, where we are and how we are. I always say the earth tells you where you are on the planet. And then the rest of your body tells you how you are.
Okay, so now we're starting to get connected to ourselves. The music is maybe we're starting to become aware of the music.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, we basically start to resonate with the music, right? We have empathy with the music, right? We kind of go along with the rhythm, if that's what we like. We go along with the melody, and that kind of gives us new ways of moving, right? If there's no music, I might not move at all, but because there's music, I kind of take it on into my body empathically, and then I might start moving. It's opening up a pathway for me.
Okay, I'm just kind of reframing here. You're moving a little bit, and before we had you nicely framed, so that's why I'm a little,
Oh,
yeah. So
I
that
can I can go back to.
okay. Just 1 second. Sorry to get a little somehow I was having trouble kind of framing you up here on this screen. Okay. Whoop. Got a little. Okay. So, sorry. You were on a roll there, so. So okay. Now, when people start getting connected to themselves, then so was there more to the self-connection? Was there more to the self-connection, or?
Yeah, I mean, after, you know, the music really helps us to kind of get moving, right? We really kind of can use the music to kind of get us going, to kind of go on a journey. And then when we're kind of, that also helps us to warm up our bodies. We're starting to move, and then we might start to move a little faster. We might start to move through space. So things are kind of warming up in us. And then usually, you know, when the body starts to warm up, also our feelings start to flow. So it's not just our physical being, also the other parts of us start to flow. And then we can actually find out, this is actually how I've been feeling. There actually was some kind of frozen or tense part in my stomach the whole day. And now that this is loosening up, I'm actually noticing I have been angry or frustrated the last 5 hours. I didn't even notice that before because I've been holding it so strong. Or out of a sudden, because I finally get to move, I start to feel so light and so happy because I'm finally ready to move, right? Because before I had to sit down or stuff like that.
So is it, you're kind of, in a sense, if we're having the metaphor, it's like, okay, what parts of me are the ice cube, right? And it's like trying to find those parts and maybe trying to loosen them up a little bit, or.
Yeah, you can specifically do that to really kind of see in your body, become aware of your whole body and see, well, which are the parts that are kind of warmed up, which are the ones that I'm aware of already, and which are the parts that I'm not so aware of. Those are the ones that are a little bit frozen. So I can start to kind of entice those and also kind of play around with them, but in a very kind way. So we don't want to stretch them really wildly or whatever, but really kind of start to play around with them in a really kind and soft way, so that we can bring blood flow to them. It's basically when a body part is tight, when muscles are tight, then there's not enough blood flow going to it. So by inviting it and kind of starting to play around that tense area, we bring blood flow and oxygen to it. And that basically melts that tension, right? So that's what happens on a physical level. But a lot of tension that is in the body also has some emotional components to it, right? So we hold our diaphragm if we want to hold in something, right? If we want to scream, but we can't, or if we want to jump up and down because we're so happy, but we can't. Stuff like that. So a lot of tension also has emotional underpinnings, emotional connections. Everything is connected. So if we start to loosen up that part in our bodies, that those feelings start to flow too. And that is the beauty of it all. We'll become this whole being where a lot of different things are flowing at the same time. There's a whole landscape that starts to open up.
So you're kind of seeing it's not just our body that's kind of frozen. There's like emotions that are kind of frozen.
Absolutely, and whole belief systems too, right? If I don't allow myself to feel a certain thing, there's usually a belief attached to that too that says, oh, that feeling isn't okay, or you can't jump up and down now. You know, people get scared if you jump up and down because you're in the bus or something like that. So there are usually beliefs attached to that emotion, and if that emotion is held back, then there's a tension in the body. So it's all connected.
Yeah, the body and the emotions are kind of connected with each other.
Well, but the belief system too, right?
Yeah, somehow the belief system creates kind of a rigidity, can create kind of like a rigidity or something within ourselves. I got to let that go as well. Yeah.
Also, not only, I mean, you could even have a belief system that, you know, certain things are not okay to think, right? But, certain things are not okay to think, certain things are not okay to feel, certain things are not okay to sense, right? I mean, it's not okay to feel sensual or these kind of things. A lot of these taboo things have not been okay for so long. So there are a lot of belief systems also that connect with feelings, but also with the body.
So it's kind of like these judgments are kind of like or actually it's beyond judgment. It's rules, kind of a rules-based life. So I have to do this rule. I have to do this rule. That the
Yes.
rules kind of freeze us into a way of being, maybe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There can be rules that freeze us in the way of being, or there can, of course, also be physical things like accident or traumatic events that kind of freeze up the body, right? And then cause all kinds of things. So the frozenness in our systems can come from different places. But one of them is the belief system that freezes us top down, if we call this top-down process, or if we have an accident, a traumatic event that freezes us from the bottom up. That's also possible.
So the top-down freezing is kind of more of our cognitive mental structures that are causing a rigidity. And the other one is maybe some kind of emotional trauma, or is that what you're saying, or fear, or something like that?
It can be a physical or emotional trauma. If you have a strong accident, you break several parts of your body and they have to be still for a long time. There will be a trauma in your physical system and you won't be able to move it as much as before. And so that will also cause some rigidity in your muscle system, in your nervous system, and that will also cause some rigidity then in some emotions and belief system if you don't pay attention to it. Yeah.
Okay, so now we've loosened up. We're kind of we're connecting to our body. Now, where does the empathy start with another person? You know what I mean? Like we're talking about self-empathy. The next for me, I've got this model of empathy, which I've mentioned to you before, which is self-empathy, mirrored empathy based on mirror neurons, imaginative empathy and empathic action that kind of overlap with each other. So now, how do we get into this next stages or next parts of empathy where we're empathizing with someone else?
Well, that is exactly like you're saying it. So in the dance also we might mirror somebody else. We might do exactly what they do also, right? So that we might even do that in a group where one person does a movement and everybody else is following. So a very simple kind of follow the leader kind of experience. Or if you're in a couple, then one might mirror the other, or maybe you just get into groove together, right? That somehow you're doing things in one rhythm, might be doing different things, but in the same rhythm. So there you kind of in one groove together, right? So that would be one thing. The next thing, though, I would say being empathic with each other is when this kind of energetic thing happens. It is like we're coming back to the image of water, where one individual as one drop of water comes together with another individual, another drop of water, and they come together and they build one bigger drop of water. And within this bigger drop of water, whatever they do has some kind of relationship to each other. And it works because they're within this one third body that happened, this one energy field that kind of encompasses them both. So they're basically kind of in one energy and they're resonating with each other and they're playing off each other in a certain way. Nobody's planning anything. Nobody's mirroring the other. But there's this merged kind of feeling that there's a bigger force that leads them both.
Well, I have a little bit of a story about that. I think I might have told you about it, but I had done a workshop where there was a lot of empathy. It was kind of more verbal, and people sitting and kind of I was kind of like bathed in empathy, you know, like for a couple days. And I found that I was kind of like deeply resonant with empathy. It's almost like we have empathy batteries, right? It's like you have that sense of having been heard deeply, and it just kind of fills my body. And you know, there's other times that I've been, you know, been in a real fight situation. I'm like really on edge, and I see that with other people too, who, especially, you know, like at the Occupy movement, there are people who are just, you know, really on the edge. It took the littlest thing to kind of set them off into some kind of conflict. So I was at the exact opposite, like just totally, you know, into the feelings. Then the next day I went to the dance, and I thought, well, I'm going to dance and I'm just going to mirror other people. But it was more than mirroring. It was, I want to get who you are. I really want to perceive and feel the essence of who you are as a human being. And I want to hear everything that you have to say. But, you know, it's using that metaphor of hearing for, I want to feel physically everything energetically that you have to say. So, I kind of entered it by doing, with just mirroring people, right? So I'm like mirroring. And then sometimes people would be dancing so fast that I just, you know, like the mirroring was a pretty bad, you know, distortion of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then they would actually even see it, and they would slow down a little bit so I could catch up and start getting into it. And then I found, just like you were saying, there was this point where it's like almost like, you know, tongue and groove, we kind of clicked. And it's like at that point we were moving like that drop of water, you know, the joint drop of water. And before, it's almost as if I would know where they're going before they're going to go there. And I would offer some kind of an energy, and then they would kind of take that in and play with it and add another energy to it. And this is, I'm doing this very slow motion here, but this was going really fast, you know, just, it's like, it's so fast that there's no time to be thinking about what is happening. It's happening at this, you know, it's like the fish almost swimming. You see that or the birds flying, and how they work in a school or in a flock, that it happens, there's some deep resonance that it can happen so quickly. And you're even almost knowing it in anticipation of knowing where things might go, could go, you know. So it's really quite intoxicating kind of a feeling.
But you need a deep listening for that, right?
Yeah, and it was a deep listening, and I had to be I have that, you know, more or less all the time, but this was one of those peak kind of experiences where it was really deep. And what kind of was the gateway into it, I think, was having been heard really deeply. So it was like, because I'd been heard so deeply, I didn't have a lot of anxieties about being seen or being judged, and, you know, or self-judgment, because I'd already been accepted so deeply that it was like, that's why I use it as the empathy battery needs to get charged up. And it's like this reservoir of calm and relaxation, you know, deep self-empathy. So just one experience there. That was one of those peak experiences. And of course, your dance dance workshop.
Yeah, sounds great. Sounds absolutely great. I mean, these are a lot of exercises like that we would use, right, to kind of get people to that experience if they're open to it. You know, you can't plan it. Some people might not get there, or they might not be open that day, or they might not be grounded in their empathy. A battery might not be full, so they might not be open for it, right? But in a dance situation, what is really fun, if, you know, one follows the other, and then the other one follows the first one again, you know, so you can start to play with that a little bit, that one leads, and then the second follows, and the second leads, and then the first one follows, and so on, so to kind of establish some rapport, and then slowly this kind of third body can build.
Yeah. So there's kind of like things that you can do to enter into that state.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
there's a pathway that things that.
Yeah, there are certain techniques that can lead people into that. And of course, it's really important to not have any performance anxiety, or if you think you have to be especially cool or beautiful or whatever, then it's not going to work because you're not going to listen. You're not going to listen to yourself or the others because you're still in this belief system that you have to be cool or beautiful or whatever. Then it won't happen.
So, do you have any anecdotes like that? Any experiences that were kind of like peak experiences
Well,
for
I
you?
have I have lots of them, of course, but just kind of you told me about your experience. What reminds me of it reminds me a lot of our last international retreat in Switzerland last summer, and you know there are always around 40 people or so in the class, and there's this beautiful round-shaped room, and there's a big door where you can go outside, so you can always go outside and inside when you wish. And of course, you know, in our classes, there's music and there's instruction and all these things. But after day 3, I basically didn't have to give any instructions anymore because the group kind of the group had built a group body, a group energy, and they started to do things by itself. I basically was there as the instructor and held the space. Of course, there's a certain thing that a good instructor needs to do. He or she needs to hold the space energetically, and I need to follow the group energetically so that I kind of know if I need to give an instruction or not. But from day 3 on, the group kind of went on its own journey, and I basically had to follow also. So even as the instructor, you can become part of this body and just follow. So that was really fascinating to be part of that, and also let the group decide where they want to go and what to do. And often I might think, well, now would be a good time to actually go out. And that's when they start to go out. I don't have to say anything. Let's go, And what was so great about this group, because there are people from all over the world coming to this place, they don't have the possibility to talk so much with each other because they speak different languages. So they right away, they drop onto a different level, onto the level of sensation and energy sensing, body sensing, emotional sensing, because they can't go into this blah, blah, blah world with each other just because they can't speak each other's languages so well, right? So there it goes really fast that they drop into this space of self-connection and connection with others and connection with the deeper group, and then also empathy with nature around them. That's also a lot of work that we do there, that we really start to sense nature. We touch it. We touch the leaves, we go around, we spend an afternoon with eyes closed and, walk around the forest there, exploring the forest with eyes closed, or going into the lake, eyes closed. Of course, there are always people watching, that there's no accidents happening or something like that. But there's a deep connection to the sensory part of ourselves, so that we can actually start to sense things and be empathic with ourselves, others, and also nature. And those are really my peak experiences, when a whole group just goes, and I just have to hold the space and kind of, just gently tweak things, and they go.
So it's like a bunch of drops of water then kind of coming together. It's like the
multiple.
It's the ocean. Maybe kind of need that for humanity, where people are kind of sensitive to each other and kind of including each other, and yeah.
And also what happens is they're very, very loving. I mean, we're really known there at this retreat center as the group that is so loving and so funny, and also so colorful, because we have all these different colors from these different cultures and places of the earth that we're coming from. They already know us. They're already always so looking forward to us coming, because we're bringing such good vibes. Because there's so much love that starts to happen through this empathic, being in relationship with each other, the place and the earth, and respectful, accepting way of dealing with each other.
So his empathy, I mean, in the dance, and we've kind of talked about empathy before, and I've been kind of like, oh, let's do more about empathy, and I've kind of felt that, I don't know, there's been a little bit of resistance or something. I don't know if about empathy. So it seemed like you were really focused on the self-empathy part. I don't know if that.
No, that's not true.
No.
I think it's important that in the classes people have, like you said also before, you have to be grounded in yourself, right? You have to kind of sense your own body. You have to know yourself before you start to be empathic with somebody else. Otherwise, if you don't know what's going on with them, then they have to sit with all of the stuff that's going on with you that you're not aware of. And that's not fair, I think. So I think we always have to kind of do a self-empathy first, kind of see what's going on, and because there are people who are quite sensitive. One of them is me, for example. So if I'm around somebody who is not conscious of what's going on inside of them, I will sense it, because I'm a very sensate. I am like water. I'm a very sensate person, so I will start to sense that. So I think it's really kind of respect of everybody else, in respect of ourselves, of life that's flowing through us, and also in respect of everybody else, is that we have self-empathy first, to kind of that we see where we are, where are we, who are we today, and then we can go and have empathy with somebody else.
Well, you do a lot of art stuff. I'm just noticing that the curtains here, that the light's coming across, and I feel very artistic here with the lights. I don't know if you can see the light lines.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, you have
just in case anybody's wondering what that is.
You have the stripe across your face.
Yeah, it looks very much like you're very creative, like your photos on your website.
You're a zebra.
The zebra, yeah, the empathy zebra. Well, yeah, so the one thing I was also interested, there's like different things that block us from empathy, and you were kind of talking about that. And the one that I think is that I've heard come up before is people that and we've talked about this before, is that as you grow up, if you don't have an empathic environment, or that you kind of lose your sense of self, and that it becomes kind of like, well, I really have to find myself, right? And kind of have that sense of boundaries. And I wonder if you have thoughts about that, because you and I have talked about that. I mean, you're even saying that yourself, that kind of growing up, it was like, that you had difficulty knowing where you began and ended. Is that something like that? And that it was really important for you to get a sense of self and a sense of boundaries. And
exactly. Well, for example, I grew up with parents where my mother was always ill and my dad wasn't really present. So, of course, as growing up as a child, it was really important for me to know what was going on with my mother, right? So I didn't learn how to have a boundary with her, because part of me was constantly checking if she was still breathing, or, if she needed something or whatever. That's what kids do. So the time when kids usually kind of start to establish their boundaries themselves, I was still kind of constantly checking with her if she was okay or not. So... So my empathic skills, my kind of checking on others if things are okay, they're extremely well developed. But the ability of, well, this is me, and this is actually somebody else, and I don't need to take care of them right now. That is something that I had to learn, and that I'm still, have to practice every day. That's not something that comes easily for me. But these energetic skills that we learn as kids, we all have different, different. We learn them in different kind of amounts. So I learned really well to be empathic. I'm a real specialist on that. And so I really, for me, it's really important to have this self-empathy first, because otherwise, I totally lose myself. For other people, they have this, oh, this is me, ta-da.
Well established.
the well-established kind of ego really well, and for them it's really important to kind of start to sense into somebody else. So it's all beautiful, and we can all, help each other to learn these things, and no one is the same than the other. So we can all kind of learn different different levels of these different things. Yeah.
Yeah, so and it might be helpful just to know how it is that you are, and that all these ways are okay, and not to be self-judgmental or something about it. And
exactly,
because it really, I mean, it ties in with the science of child development, where that, as I understand it, that as we're born, we don't have that sense of self. It's almost as if our feelings, just everything's kind of in a big, it's all me, or it's all us, or it's all, and then around 18 months, children, I think 18 months, 2 years, whatever, that you start developing a sense of self, that I am a separate being.
Yeah.
And it's actually, they have tests for that, which is, the mirror test. Can you recognize yourself in the mirror as a separate entity? And they've got put a mark on the kid and see if they recognize it. And sometimes they don't. And until they recognize it, they don't realize that they have a sense of self. And there's other tests, like they'll take like a box of crayons with a picture of crayons, and they'll put candles in it, and they'll show it to a child and say, and they'll open it, and they say, what do you think is in there? I say, well, I think it's crayons in there. They open it, and it's actually candles. And then somebody else comes, and they say, what do you think they will think is in this box? And if they don't have that sense of self, and different, they say that person will think the same thing I'm thinking, which is that there's candles in there. So, but if they have that sense of self and seeing themselves as separate, they will say, well, they'll know that person thinks that there's crayons in there. So I hope I explained that right, but
no, so, I understood.
Yeah, you're taking the position of someone else and kind of stepping outside yourself in kind of a cognitive, imaginative sense. And I think that's a little bit maybe what we're talking about here, is having that sense of the clear boundary of me allows you to kind of shift like that. And
Exactly. But they're not only mental boundaries, they're also emotional boundaries, and of course physical boundaries, right? So we could kind of give them give the boundaries different categories also.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like
your physical boundaries could be crossed, right? Or your emotional boundaries could be crossed, when, for example, when you cry and you're hurting, and then, your parent says, oh, you're not sad, this is not hurting.
Oh, yeah.
You're stupid, or stuff like that.
Yeah. So your experience is denied. It's not reflected. It's not like, oh, you're hurting. It's like, no, you're not hurting. Somebody's telling you that you're not what you are, and that's
exactly. Or you're experiencing all these things, but you're constantly checking if somebody else is breathing. Then you're denying your feelings too, right? Because you're constantly doing something where your survival depends on.
Yeah. So you're not being seen as well too.
No, there's nobody there to see you, and you're not there to see you either, because you're constantly...
you're focusing on the other person all the time, and you're kind of like denying your own experience.
Yeah, and you can only feel what they feel, but you haven't really learned how to feel what you feel. Well, that happens quite often, actually.
Well, this is a big part of this whole area of highly sensitive people and empaths. That it's about people who have a sense, seems to be, from my understanding at least, is it's a sense of not knowing where the boundaries are.
Yeah.
And kind of being overwhelmed by other energies, and like finding ways of dealing with that. And one way that I see they deal with it, it's through imagination, creating energy fields and all these different things. But I wonder if there's not a way of the way to heal that or deepen that is more to be seen. You know what I mean? To be reflected and to be seen, to
Absolutely.
kind of go back to what we
Yeah.
needed in life.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of, there's a way of trying to protect yourself, and the other is getting that connection that we kind of needed growing up. So I've been thinking about that.
Yeah, I actually think there's one thing that we do in our sessions which is really, really healing for that. And this is something that I call authentic expression, where one person moves and there's another person there who's witnessing. And this person is actually witnessing, hopefully without judgment, and he's also really grounded. And then later, this doesn't happen so much in the evening classes, but more kind of in the more advanced classes. And then afterwards, the mover kind of explains what was going on for her or him in the dance, and the witness is either there, not saying anything, or they report what they have seen. Right, what they have seen, and also how the dance touched them. So, for example, well, when you were walking through the room, I started to feel a big longing. So that somehow what you did touched somebody else, right? So that you have that there's a result in that.
How your actions affected someone and what the
Exactly.
outcome kind of was to that.
Yeah.
And you get to see it and feel it.
Yeah, but that there's a clear differentiation between the mover and between the witness. So the witness is clearly describing what they saw, but then what they experienced for themselves. So they're describing what the other person was doing or how they were moving, how that affected them. So they're not there to interpret, oh, when you walk through
And analyzing,
walking away from whatever, your old love or whatever. So it's not about that. It is about really describing what they saw and then how that affected the witness. And that is a really, really healing thing. Because that means, me as an individual kind of affected somebody else.
Yeah.
While I was experiencing this person was experiencing that through my movement. Right.
And that's creating that sense of self and differentiation.
Yes, exactly.
So it's kind of like we have this quality of self and differentiation, and we also have the ability to connect and kind of lose and go into that third state of the drops being, all commingled. And I guess there's something about needing to be able to go between the two in a harmonic way.
Exactly, and that's what relationship is. And at the same time, we're all so unique. We're such unique drops, right? But we're all breathing the same air. We're all the same, and we all have the same life force flowing through us, and we're all humans, right? But we're also unique at the same time, and we bring these unique things together. But we're also kind of riding this bigger life force. So we're dealing with both, and I think that's really the beauty also in dance, right? I mean, I stand on my own 2 feet and I dance with you and around you, and I can cross the floor, but I can cross the floor on my own 2 feet in my own rhythm, or I can cross them following your rhythm. I have the choice. So I think that the important thing there is that I have choice if I want to do an individual thing or if I want to melt with the bigger thing. And also on top of it, I think a lot of the times, we're not aware of how we are connected to the bigger field, right? I think there is a bigger field all the time. I can't prove it because I'm in it, and I can't feel it consciously because I'm in it. But I'm sure that there is. We're always together in some kind of bigger field.
Oh, that is just as human beings we're connected.
Yeah. Exactly. Of course, we can't see it or feel it consciously because we're inside of it.
Well, I've interviewed people like Marco Iacoboni, who's he's kind of like a neuroscience expert, and he's just talking about the mirror neurons. How we can't help it. We think we're separate entities, but as we're just walking down the street, we're kind of like everybody's emotion and movements, it tends to play itself out within us. And so that our reality is not as, separate as, we might think we are.
No, no. That's the same in the class. I of course have a plan when we start a class, but what actually really happens in the class has to do with what the people who is coming and what the people bring that day. What openness, what kind of mobility, which kind of emotions, what charge, and then this whole class is being built by everybody together.
Yeah. Well, we've gone for almost an hour, so we probably should slowly wind down. I love talking about empathy and exploring it, and the dance has been one of the main ways that I've kind of done my emotional exploration around this. So
Cool.
I'm very grateful for that that space and is available, that you create. Because I've had a lot of very meaningful, and a lot of these interviews I'm referring to experiences that I had within the dance. I have a lot of other stories. So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So is there any final kind of thoughts about this, or about empathy and creating a culture of water?
Well, I think, as long as people keep dancing, I think that's a good thing. As long as we keep thawing those ice cubes in our minds and hearts and bodies, that's great. Anything we can do to connect to ourselves, to others, and to nature more is the best, I think.
Well, okay. Well, we have dance in a couple hours, so I look forward to seeing you there. We'll see you in about 4 hours, I think. So
very much. I'm looking to it already too.
Okay, yeah, I can see I need that too. I'm getting a little stiff here.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, great.
Cool.
Well, thanks for spending this time talking about this, and I hope you can kind of do more in the future around empathy and especially dance. That's great.
Yes, excellent, wonderful. Well, I'm looking forward to more also.
Okay, well then we'll see you in a little while.
Alrighty. So did you actually so you recorded this, right?
This is recording. This is all recording, and in about 2 or 3 days it'll be online.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
we'll put up
and you'll tell me when it's online.
Oh, definitely, and we can do more. Go into depths on some of these other.
Yeah, I would.
Things.
I would love to. We just kind of scratched the surface.
Oh yeah, take
and
one.
This is great for me too. So I've been kind of.
Oh, you've been making notes. Oh, good. We got We have other topics to kind of go into.
Yeah, but it's so fast, so it would be great for me to watch it again.
Okay. Alrighty, then I will say tschüss, since we both speak German.
Tschüss.
Everybody.
Tschüss. Excellent. See you very soon.
Bye.
See the world through other people's eyes. Empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.